Captain Day-Wan stood on the observation deck of the quiet dawn, watching the massive station rotating slowly against the backdrop of stars. The Galactic Assembly headquarters was beautiful in a cold, mechanical way. Thousands of ships from dozens of species came and went like insects around a hive, each one belonging to civilizations that had mastered the stars long before humanity even dreamed of leaving Earth. He adjusted his uniform and tried not to feel small. Humanity had been part of the assembly for only 3 years. 3 years of being the newest members, the youngest species, the ones everyone else looked down upon. 3 years of hearing the same words over and over: primitive, backward, crude. Dr. Ji-Hai approached from behind, her footsteps quiet on the metal floor. She carried a data tablet pressed against her chest like a shield. "The council session starts in 20 minutes, she said softly. "Ambassador Tae-sung wants us there early." Daewon nodded without turning around. "What's the agenda today?" "The Vrin are proposing new classifications for military capabilities." Ji-Hai's voice was tight. "They want to create a new category. Pre-military status, let me guess. That category would include us." "Only us, actually." Daewon finally turned to face her. Ji-Hai was one of the smartest people he knew. A xenoanthropologist who could speak 7 alien languages and understand a dozen more. But right now she just looked tired and frustrated in a way that had become familiar to every human serving in the diplomatic corps. "They'll never accept us," Daewon said, "not as equals. We could have the biggest fleet in the galaxy and they'd still call us children playing with dangerous toys." Ji-Hai managed a weak smile. "Maybe, but we still have to try. Come on. Tae-sung will be waiting." The council chamber was enormous, a sphere of polished metal with seating arranged in circular tiers. Each species had their own section, designed to accommodate their particular biology. The Vrin occupied a prominent position near the center, their scaled bodies gleaming under the lights. The Kalesh floated in tanks of methane. The Taurans sat on heated pedestals that kept their rock-like bodies at optimal temperature. Humanity's section was small, tucked near the outer wall. Easy to ignore, easy to forget about. Ambassador Tae-sung was already in his seat reviewing notes on his personal display. He was an older man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes, lines that seemed to have gotten deeper over the past 3 years. He looked up as Daewon and Ji-Hai took their seats beside him. "Good, you're here." Tae-sung closed his display. "This is going to be unpleasant. The Vrin have been building support for this proposal for months. They have the votes. Can't we challenge it?" Ji-Hai asked. "On what grounds?" "They're not violating any assembly laws. They're just creating a new classification system." Tae-sung's jaw tightened. "A classification system designed to exclude us from military councils, from defense contracts, from everything that matters." The session began with the usual formalities. The Speaker of the Assembly, a tall crystalline being called Mordath, activated the central hologram. The agenda appeared in the air, translated into every language simultaneously. Item 7 was listed simply, "Proposal for Military Classification Reform." The Vrin representative rose when his turn came. His name was Ketherick, and his scales were a deep red that indicated high rank among his species. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber with a bass rumble that made the air vibrate. "Honored delegates," Ketherick began, spreading his clawed hands. "We gathered today to address a matter of galactic security. The Assembly has always maintained clear standards for military capability. These standards protect us all. They ensure that only those species with proper understanding of advanced warfare participate in our defense councils." He paused, letting his words sink in. Several delegates nodded in agreement. However, recent additions to our Assembly have complicated this system. We now have members whose military technology remains in developmental stages. Kinetic weapons, chemical propulsion, mass-based projectiles. The way he said these words made them sound dirty, shameful. These technologies are not wrong, simply premature. They represent an earlier stage of development. Ketherick's eyes, yellow and cold, turned toward the human section. "I propose we create a new classification, pre-military status. Species in this category would still be Assembly members, but they would be excluded from military councils until their technology reaches modern standards. This is not punishment. This is protection. Protection for them and for us." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species voiced immediate support. Others seemed uncertain. But no one spoke in humanity's defense. Tae-sung requested recognition. The speaker acknowledged him with obvious reluctance. The human delegate may speak. Tae-sung stood, and Daewon felt a surge of pride despite everything. The ambassador didn't look intimidated. He looked angry. Representative Kethrick speaks of protection, Tae-sung said, his voice calm but hard. But his proposal is not about protection. It's about exclusion. Humanity's weapons may use kinetic energy rather than plasma or sonic frequencies, but they are effective. Our ships have proven themselves capable in every simulation, every exercise. Simulations against outdated scenarios, Kethrick interrupted. When faced with true military power, your weapons would be ineffective. Worse, they would be a liability. Projectile weapons are silent, crude. They lack the sophistication of energy-based systems. Silent doesn't mean weak, Tae-sung replied. Kethrick's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Silent means invisible to proper sensors. It means incompatible with coordinated fleet tactics. It means primitive. He looked around the chamber. I mean no disrespect to our human friends, but facts are facts. They throw metal through space and hope it hits something. This is not warfare as we understand it. The vote was called. The hologram displayed the results in real time. 62% in favor, 23% opposed, 15% abstaining. The proposal passed. Humanity was officially classified as pre-military, excluded from defense councils, barred from military trade agreements, removed from strategic planning committees. The session continued with other business, but Daewon stopped listening. He watched Kethrick accept congratulations from other delegates, watched species that humanity had tried to befriend vote to diminish them, watched the assembly treat Earth like a child's toy that needed to be put away. After the session ended, Tae-sung led them to a private meeting room. He poured himself a drink from a bottle he kept for particularly bad days. He didn't offer any to Daewon or Ji-hai. He just drank in silence for a long moment. Earth Command will want recommendations, he finally said. They'll want to know if we should continue diplomatic efforts or withdraw from the assembly entirely. What will you tell them? Ji-hai asked. Tae-sung stared at his glass. I'll tell them that the assembly has made their position clear. They don't respect kinetic weapons. They don't respect human military technology. They think we're children playing with slingshots while the adults handle real warfare. So we withdraw? Daewon couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. No. Tae-sung looked up and there was something new in his eyes, something cold and determined. We stay, we smile. We accept their classification. And we prove them wrong. How? Ji-hai leaned forward. They won't let us participate in anything meaningful now. Then we don't participate. Tae-sung set his glass down with a soft click. We develop. We innovate. We take everything they think makes us weak and turn it into our strength. He looked at both of them. They want to hear us? They want us to make noise like their precious plasma cannons and sonic disruptors. He smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. They will. Eventually, they will hear us, and when they do, they'll wish we'd stayed silent. Daewon and Ji-hai left the meeting room an hour later with new orders. Return to Earth. Brief the military leadership. Begin research initiatives. The diplomatic mission was changing into something else, something more practical. As their shuttle departed from the assembly station, Daewon took one last look at the massive structure. All those species, all those civilizations, all so certain of their superiority. None of them understood what they'd just done. They'd mocked humanity's silence. They'd dismissed Earth's weapons as primitive noisemakers. They had no idea that humanity had been making noise since the dawn of time. They had no idea that humans had been turning rhythm into power for thousands of years, and they had no idea that the drums were about to speak. Colonel Hyunwoo walked through the underground facility like a man on a mission. Because the complex was new, built specifically for what Earth Command was calling the Resonance Initiative. Stupid name, in his opinion, but he hadn't been asked. The elevator descended for 40 seconds before opening into a vast research level. Scientists and engineers moved between workstations, their faces lit by holographic displays showing weapon simulations and acoustic models. In the center of it all stood Dr. Minseo, surrounded by historical artifacts that had no business being in a military research facility. Colonel, Minseo greeted him with a distracted nod. She was in her 30s, small and intense with ink stains on her fingers from taking handwritten notes. Old-fashioned, but she claimed it helped her think. Right on time. Come look at this. Hyunwoo approached the display table. Spread across it were drums. Dozens of them, from different eras and cultures. Korean jangu drums with their distinctive hourglass shape. Japanese taiko drums, massive and imposing. African djembes. European military drums with faded regimental colors. I'm a soldier, doctor, not a musician, Hyunwoo said. Why am I looking at museum pieces? Because these museum pieces, Minseo tapped one of the jangu drums, represent humanity's oldest weapon. She pulled up a hologram showing ancient battles. Every human culture that engaged in warfare used drums. Every single one. Why? Coordination, Hyunwoo answered immediately. Keeping troops in formation? Signaling commands over the noise of battle. Yes, but that's not all. Minseo switched the hologram to show brain scans. Drums affect human psychology in measurable ways. They increase adrenaline. They synchronize heartbeats in groups. They trigger fight-or-flight responses in enemies. Drums are psychological weapons as much as communication tools. Hyunwoo studied the brain scans with more interest. You think we can use this? Against the assembly species? I know we can. Minseo's eyes lit up with the intensity of someone who'd found the answer to an impossible question. The assembly species mock our kinetic weapons because they're silent. Missiles don't scream. Railgun rounds don't announce themselves. Compared to plasma that crackles and sonic weapons that literally weaponize sound, our weapons seem crude. They are crude, Hyunwoo said. That's the point. Simple, reliable, effective. Exactly. But what if we made them not silent? Minseo brought up new schematics. What if we made them sing? Or rather, beat? The schematic showed a standard destroyer-class warship, but with modifications Hyunwoo had never seen before. External arrays dotted the hull in precise geometric patterns. What am I looking at? Kinetic percussion arrays, Minseo explained, her words coming faster now. Synchronized explosive charges mounted on the hull. They don't do damage by themselves. They're not weapons in the traditional sense, but when detonated in sequence, they create shockwaves, vibrations, patterns. She played a simulation. The charges on the ship's hull flashed in sequence, one after another, creating a visible wave of force that rippled through the space around the vessel. The simulation included audio. Translated into human hearing range, it sounded like a drum. A deep resonant boom that repeated in a steady rhythm. You want to turn warships into drums, Hyunwoo said slowly. I want to turn warfare into percussion. Minseo pulled up another display. This one showing battle formations. Imagine a fleet engagement. Multiple ships all firing their kinetic weapons but coordinated. Railgun volleys timed to create patterns. Missile launches synchronized with percussion arrays. Every ship part of a larger rhythm. The aliens will think we've lost our minds. The aliens will be confused, Minseo corrected. Their tactics assume energy weapons with predictable frequencies. Their shields are designed to deflect plasma and refract lasers. Their sensors track harmonic signatures, but percussion, rhythm, they have no framework for that. Hyunwoo walked around the display, studying it from every angle. His military mind was already seeing the possibilities. Psychological warfare. If it affects human psychology, it might affect alien psychology too, maybe differently, but still. And their technology, Jihai's voice came from the doorway. She entered the lab with a stack of xenobiological reports. I've been reviewing sensory data on assembly species. Most of them process sound fundamentally differently than humans. They're used to pure tones, controlled frequencies. Random or complex rhythms could overload their sensory processing. Could or will? Hyunwoo asked. Won't know until we test it. Jihee set down her reports. But the theory is sound. Pun intended. Over the following months, the facility became a strange fusion of military base and music conservatory. Engineers worked alongside musicologists. Weapons designers consulted with drummers from traditional Korean performance groups. The goal was to understand rhythm at its most fundamental level, then weaponize it. Hyunwoo spent his days reviewing tactical simulations and his evenings listening to drum performances. He learned about different rhythmic patterns, about how certain beats could excite or calm, energize or disorient. He learned the names of traditional Korean drum pieces, samul nori, pangmul, the complex rhythms used in ancient court ceremonies and village festivals. It's all about timing, explained Dong-soo, a master drummer brought in as a consultant. The old man's hands were gnarled with age but still moved with perfect precision across the jangu drum. Each beat must come at exactly the right moment. Too early, too late, the rhythm falls apart. But when the timing is perfect, the rhythm becomes more than sound. It becomes a force. Hyunwoo watched those weathered hands create patterns that had been passed down for centuries. Can you teach a computer to do that? Dongsu smiled. Computers can replicate the technique. But the spirit? The intent behind each beat? That comes from here. He tapped his chest. You want to turn warships into instruments. That's good. But remember, an instrument without a musician is just an object. Your ships will need more than programming. They'll need operators who understand rhythm in their bones. The first prototype was mounted on a Corvette-class vessel, the Tempo. Min Seo had designed the percussion arrays herself, placing charges and patterns inspired by traditional drum placement. The test would take place in a deserted system, far from any assembly traffic. Hyunwoo watched from the command center of a monitoring ship as the Tempo began its demonstration. First, the percussion arrays fired in a simple pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, a basic beat that translated through space as pressure waves detectable on sensors. Then, the rhythm became more complex. The arrays fired in patterns that mimicked traditional Korean drumming, fast beats followed by slow, hard strikes followed by soft. The Tempo didn't just make noise. It performed. Next came the kinetic weapons integration. The ship's railgun fired, but not randomly. Each shot was timed to coincide with the percussion arrays. The result was a layered rhythm, like a drummer using multiple instruments at once. The railgun's sharp cracks provided the high notes. The percussion arrays provided the bass. Signal strength? Hyunwoo asked. Detectable at 15,000 kilometers, an operator reported. The pattern is clear and distinct. Any ship in sensor range would hear this. And the projectiles themselves, on target. The rhythm doesn't affect accuracy. If anything, the synchronized timing improves firing solutions by reducing random variance. The final test involved multiple ships. 3 corvettes, all equipped with percussion arrays, all coordinated by a central conductor AI. They performed what Min Seo called a combat symphony. Each ship played its part, creating an interwoven rhythm that was far more complex than any single vessel could produce. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The cold mathematics of ballistics translated into something primal and ancient, modern weapons speaking in the language of humanity's oldest wars. It works, Min Seo whispered, watching the display with awe. The concept works, Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Now we need to find out if it works against the assembly. 2 weeks later, Hyunwoo presented the results to Earth Command. The assembled admirals and generals watched the test footage in silence. When it ended, the room remained quiet for a long moment. They'll call it primitive, Admiral Choi finally said. She was the head of strategic operations, a woman who'd commanded warships for 30 years. They'll say we're beating on our ships like savages. Let them, Hyunwoo replied. The Vrin called our weapons silent. Said silence made us weak. Now we're not silent anymore. We're loud. We're rhythmic. We're everything they don't understand. And you think that's an advantage? I think that confusion is the foundation of every successful military strategy. Hyunwoo pulled up tactical analyses. The assembly species have been fighting each other for thousands of years. They know plasma tactics. They know sonic weapon countermeasures. They know energy shield harmonics. But this? He gestured at the frozen image of the Tempo, its hull flashing with percussion fire. This is new. This is human. Admiral Choi leaned back in her chair, thinking, You're proposing we deploy this? In actual combat scenarios? I'm proposing we wait for an opportunity. The assembly has made it clear they don't take us seriously. Fine. When the moment comes when someone pushes us too far, we show them what human warfare really sounds like. The alarm woke Captain Daewon from a dead sleep. He was on his feet and moving before his conscious mind fully registered what was happening. Red emergency lights pulsed through the corridors of the Thunderhead as he sprinted toward the bridge. Report, he barked, sliding into his command chair. His crew was already at their stations, faces tight with tension. Distress signal from New Jeju Colony. Lieutenant Kyungmi answered from the weapons station. Vrin raiders. 3 heavy cruisers. They hit the mining platforms first, then moved to the civilian sectors. Daewon pulled up the tactical display. New Jeju was one of humanity's border colonies, home to 50,000 people. Mining families mostly, workers who'd chosen the frontier life for better opportunities. The colony had basic defenses, but nothing that could stand against Vryn heavy cruisers. Time to assembly peacekeepers? 4 days at best, Sang-Ho reported from communications. The young ensign's hands shook slightly as he worked his console. New Jeju doesn't have 4 days. The raiders are demanding they surrender all mining equipment and refined materials. If they refuse, the Vryn are threatening to start bombarding population centers. And we're the only human ship in range, Daewon said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. The Thunderhead is alone. Daewon looked at the tactical display again. 1 destroyer against 3 heavy cruisers. By traditional calculations, it was suicide. The Vryn ships had better armor, better shields, better weapons. They had sonic disruptors that could tear apart a ship's hull from the inside out. The Thunderhead had railguns and missiles. Silent, primitive human weapons, except they weren't silent anymore. How long until we reach New Jeju? 3 hours at maximum burn, Kyung-mi answered. Then we burn. Daewon activated the ship-wide comm. All hands battle stations. This is not a drill. We are engaging 3 Vryn heavy cruisers in defense of New Jeju colony. I won't lie to you. The odds are bad. But those are our people down there. Our families. Our future. And I'll be damned if I let some scaled raiders take that away without a fight. He closed the channel and looked at Kyung-mi. Lieutenant, activate the percussion arrays. All of them. Kyung-mi's face split into a fierce grin. Finally. Which pattern, sir? Start with the Pansori sequence. The aggressive one. I want them to hear us coming. The Thunderhead had been one of the first destroyers retrofitted with the new systems. Kyung-mi had trained on the percussion arrays for months, working with traditional drummers to understand the rhythms. Before joining the military, she'd been a percussionist in an orchestra. Now she was about to play the deadliest instrument ever created. The 3 hours passed in tense preparation. Daewon reviewed tactical plans with his bridge crew. The engineering team pushed the reactor to maximum output. The medical bay prepared for casualties. Everyone knew what was coming. When the Thunderhead dropped out of FTL at the edge of the New Jeju system, the Vryn ships were exactly where the distress signal had indicated. 3 massive cruisers hanging in orbit above the colony like vultures. On the planet below, defense batteries fired sporadically, but they might as well have been throwing rocks. They've detected us, Sang-Ho reported, receiving a transmission from the lead cruiser. Put it through. The view screen flickered to show a Vryn commander. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes gleamed with contempt. Human vessel. You are outmatched. Turn back or be destroyed. This is not your concern. This is a human colony, Daewon replied calmly. That makes it exactly my concern. You have 1 chance to withdraw peacefully. The Vryn commander's laugh was like metal scraping stone. 1 destroyer against 3 cruisers. Have your superiors taught you nothing about tactical mathematics? Or perhaps your primitive sensors cannot count properly? Our sensors work fine, Daewon said. As do our weapons. Last chance, withdraw. You want to fight? Then fight, human. Let me show you what real weapons sound like. The Vryn reached forward and cut the transmission. All ships turning toward us, Kyung-mi reported. Weapons charging. Sonic disruptors warming up. Daewon took a deep breath. Kyung-mi, let them hear the drums. Her hands moved across the weapons console like a musician at her instrument. The percussion arrays activated first, charges detonating in precise sequence across the Thunderhead's hull. The rhythm was slow at first, building gradually. Deep booms that translated through space as pressure waves, detectable on every sensor in the system. The Vryn ships hesitated. Their sensors were picking up the signal but couldn't classify it. It wasn't plasma. It wasn't sonic. It was something else entirely. Railguns, synchronized fire, Daewon ordered. Kyung-mi's fingers danced faster. The ship's 4 railguns fired in sequence, not all at once. Each shot timed to the percussion rhythm. The sharp crack of the railguns provided the high notes against the deep bass of the percussion arrays. The Vryn ships broke formation, confused by the unexpected assault. Their shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered little protection against solid projectiles. The first volley struck the lead cruiser, tearing through its outer armor. They're returning fire, Sang-Ho warned. The Vryn sonic disruptors lashed out, invisible waves of destructive sound. The Thunderhead shuddered as the waves hit, but Daewon had prepared for this. The ship's hull had been reinforced with dampening materials. The sonic attack still hurt, but it didn't tear them apart. Increase rhythm intensity, Daewon commanded. Pattern shift to HFY variation. Kyungmi nodded, her face intense with concentration. The rhythm changed, becoming faster and more complex. Multiple percussion arrays fired simultaneously now, creating layered beats. The railguns joined in, their firing rate increasing. Missiles launched in waves, their engines creating additional layers of sound as they streaked toward the enemy. The Vrin cruisers tried to coordinate their response, but something was wrong. Their movements became erratic. One cruiser drifted off course, its engines firing unevenly. "What's happening to them?" Sang-ho asked, staring at his sensors. "The rhythm is affecting their systems," Kyungmi explained, never taking her eyes off her console. Vrin ships are designed around harmonic resonance. Everything synchronized to precise frequencies. But our percussion creates chaotic vibrations. It's throwing off their harmonic stabilizers. A second volley of missiles struck the lead cruiser. The ship's shields flickered and failed. Without shield protection, the Vrin armor was tough but not invulnerable. Railgun rounds punched through the hull, venting atmosphere. "Lead cruiser is breaking off," Daewon noted. "Target the second cruiser." Increased tempo. The battle became a deadly dance. The Thunderhead moved like a boxer, weaving between sonic disruptor blasts while maintaining its relentless percussion assault. The rhythm never stopped, never faltered. It built in intensity like a storm approaching. Kyungmi was sweating now, her hands moving in patterns she'd practiced thousands of times. She wasn't just operating weapons. She was performing. Each beat mattered. Each rhythm shift was calculated for maximum effect. The second Vrin cruiser made a mistake. It tried to match its shield frequency to counter the percussion waves, but there was no frequency to match. The percussion wasn't harmonic. It was rhythmic chaos, unpredictable and primal. The attempt to match it caused sympathetic vibrations in the ship's own structure. The cruiser's hull began to shake. Small fractures appeared in the armor, then larger ones. The ship wasn't being torn apart by weapons fire. It was tearing itself apart, vibrations resonating through its structure until metal fatigue reached critical levels. "By the ancestors," Sang-ho whispered, watching the Vrin cruiser break into pieces. The third cruiser saw its companion destroyed and immediately turned to run. The lead cruiser, damaged and leaking atmosphere, followed suit. Both ships jumped to FTL, fleeing the system. The sudden silence was almost deafening. Kyungmi slowly lowered her hands from the console, staring at her display like she couldn't believe what had just happened. The bridge crew sat in stunned quiet. "Damage report," Daewon said, breaking the silence. "Hull damage, sections 4 and 7, engineering reported. Sonic attacks caused some structural stress. But shields held. We're combat capable. Casualties, minor injuries only. Medical bay has everything under control." Daewon leaned back in his chair, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Sang-ho, contact New Jeju. Let them know the raiders are gone." The ensign's hands shook as he opened the channel. The colony governor appeared on the screen, tears streaming down her face. "Captain, we didn't think anyone would come. The assembly peacekeepers were too far. We thought we were alone." "You're never alone," Daewon said quietly. "Not while Earth has ships in the sky." After the call ended, Kyungmi turned to face Daewon. "Sir, every sensor in this sector recorded that battle. Every ship, every station, every listening post. They all heard what we did." "I know," Daewon said. "The assembly will see it. The Vrin will see it. Everyone will see that humanity just drove off 3 heavy cruisers with 1 destroyer." "I know," Daewon repeated. Then he smiled. "They wanted us to make noise. They mocked our silent weapons. Well, we made noise, Lieutenant. We made it so loud the whole galaxy heard." "What do you think they'll say?" Sang-ho asked. "The assembly, I mean." The Galactic Assembly Chamber had never been so full. Every species had sent representatives, and not just junior delegates. These were leaders, military commanders, heads of state. They came because they had all seen the recordings from New Jeju. They came because the galaxy had questions that demanded answers. Ambassador Tae-sung stood in the human section, watching the chamber fill. Beside him, Admiral Boram adjusted her uniform for the 3rd time. The Admiral was not comfortable with politics. She was a fleet commander, more at home on a bridge than in a diplomatic arena, but Earth Command had insisted she come. The Assembly wanted to see the architect of humanity's new military doctrine. "They'll demand we surrender the technology," Boram muttered, "or threaten sanctions. Or both." "Let them try," Tae-sung replied calmly. We've broken no laws, used no forbidden weapons. Everything we did was with kinetic systems they've known about for years. They'll say we're being provocative. We're being effective. There's a difference. The session began with the usual formalities, but tension crackled through the air like electricity. Finally, the speaker of the assembly, Mordath, activated the central hologram. The recording from New Jeju appeared, showing the Thunderhead's battle against the Vryn cruisers. The chamber watched in silence as the human destroyer danced through space, its hull flashing with percussion fire, its weapons speaking in rhythms no alien species had ever heard in combat. They watched as Vryn ships broke formation, as one cruiser tore itself apart from sympathetic vibrations, as the remaining raiders fled. When the recording ended, the silence stretched for several seconds, then chaos erupted. Dozens of species tried to speak at once. The speaker had to activate the silence protocols, which cut off all audio except for recognized speakers. The Vryn representative, Kethric, rose first. His scales were darker than Taesung remembered, almost black with rage. This is an act of war. The human vessel attacked without provocation. The cruisers were conducting legitimate salvage operations in disputed territory. New Jeju is not disputed territory, Taesung countered immediately. It's a registered human colony. Your cruisers were conducting a raid, not salvage. They threatened civilian centers. Captain Daewon acted in accordance with assembly law regarding defense of member colonies. Defense? Kethric's voice dripped with contempt. You call that defense? That was an assault using weapons technology designed specifically to exploit vulnerabilities in Vryn ship systems. This was premeditated. Our weapons were designed to be effective. Admiral Boram spoke for the first time, her voice hard. If that effectiveness exploits your vulnerabilities, perhaps you should reconsider your ship designs. The chamber erupted again. Several species demanded explanations. Others wanted demonstrations. A few, Taesung noted with interest, looked almost impressed. The Krell Concordate's representative, a massive insectoid called Thexus, rose slowly. The Krell were known as the galaxy's most formidable warriors, and their opinion carried weight in military matters. Humans. Thexus clicked, his translator rendering the sounds into common speech. You have introduced a new combat doctrine, one that appears highly effective against traditional fleet tactics. The Krell Concordate wishes to understand this doctrine better. It's primitive noise-making, Kethric spat. They bang on their ships like savages. Strange how these savages defeated 3 of your cruisers with 1 destroyer, Thexus observed coldly. The Krell do not dismiss tactics simply because they are unconventional. He turned his multifaceted eyes toward the human section. We propose a formal challenge. Your fleet against a Krell battle group in the assembly combat arena, a demonstration for all to observe. Taesung and Boram exchanged glances. This was the moment they'd prepared for. The Krell were not asking out of curiosity. They were testing humanity's resolve. We accept, Boram said firmly. When and where? 1 month, Thexus replied. Assembly Combat Arena, Sector 7. We will provide a standard challenge fleet. 12 vessels, various classes. If your forces can achieve victory, the Krell will formally recognize human military capability. We will also support a motion to rescind your pre-military status. And if we lose? Taesung asked. Then humanity will have proven the Vryn correct. Your victory at New Jeju will be considered an anomaly, not a demonstration of true capability. Thexus leaned forward. Do you accept these terms? Boram didn't hesitate. We accept. The announcement spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity versus the Krell Concordate. It became the most anticipated military demonstration in assembly history. Species placed bets. Military analysts predicted outcomes. News organizations requested exclusive coverage rights. Back on Earth, Boram assembled her task force. 12 ships to match the Krell Challenge fleet. She chose carefully, selecting captains who understood the new doctrine. Crews who had trained with the percussion arrays. Ships that had been fully retrofitted. Captain Daewon was promoted to Commodore and given command of the cruiser Thunder's Voice. Kyung-mi became his tactical officer, bringing her expertise in percussion warfare. Other veteran crews were brought in, including soldiers who had served with Colonel Hyunwoo during the testing phases. Dr. Min Seo arrived at the fleet's staging area with her research team. She'd spent the month since New Jeju developing new rhythmic patterns, new ways to coordinate multiple ships into a single percussion ensemble. The Krell will be prepared, Minseo warned during the strategy session. They've studied the new Jeju recording. They'll have countermeasures. What kind of countermeasures? Daewon asked. Probably dampening fields to reduce percussion effectiveness, maybe even attempts to match our rhythms with their own energy weapons. Minseo pulled up simulations. The key is not to rely on a single pattern. We need to be fluid, adaptive. Like a jazz performance, not a classical piece. Jazz, Boram repeated slowly. You want us to improvise in the middle of combat? I want you to respond to what's happening, Minseo corrected. The basic rhythms are structured, yes, but how you layer them, how you shift between patterns, that should respond to battlefield conditions. The Krell are expecting us to be predictable. We need to surprise them. Training intensified. The 12 ships practiced coordination, learning to function as a single instrument with multiple parts. Each vessel had its role. Destroyers provided fast, sharp beats. Cruisers gave deep bass rhythms. Corvettes added high notes and fills. Together they created something unprecedented. The day of the demonstration arrived. The assembly combat arena was a massive space, carefully marked with boundaries and sensor arrays. Thousands of observer ships ringed the arena, some having traveled weeks just to witness the event. Boram's fleet entered first, taking position at one end of the arena. The Krell battle group entered from the opposite side. 12 ships, as promised, ranging from light frigates to a massive battlecruiser that dwarfed everything else in the arena. They brought serious hardware. Daewon observed from the bridge of the Thunder's voice. Good, Boram replied over the fleet channel. I'd be insulted if they didn't take us seriously. All ships prepare for engagement. Remember your patterns, but stay flexible. Follow my lead, but trust your instincts. The countdown began. 10 seconds, 5-0. The Krell attacked immediately, their entire fleet surging forward in a coordinated rush. Energy weapons blazed, plasma bolts crossing the distance in seconds. It was an overwhelming display of firepower meant to shock and intimidate. All ships, pattern 1. Start slow, Boram ordered calmly. The percussion arrays activated. 12 ships, each one pulsing with synchronized charges. The rhythm was simple at first, a basic heartbeat pattern. Boom, 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 deep and steady, building slowly. Then the railguns joined in. Each ship's kinetic weapons firing in time with the percussion. The sharp cracks punctuated the deep booms, creating a layered rhythm that echoed through the arena. The Krell's initial charge faltered. Their sensors were registering the percussion signals, but their tactical AI couldn't interpret them as weapons fire. The pattern didn't match any known attack profile. Pattern 2, increase tempo, Boram commanded. The rhythm accelerated. What had been a slow heartbeat became faster, more urgent. The 12 human ships moved in formation, weaving between Krell vessels while maintaining their percussion assault. Missiles launched in waves, their detonations adding to the rhythm. One Krell frigate tried to match its shield frequency to the percussion pattern. It was the same mistake the Vryn had made. The frigate's shields collapsed under sympathetic vibrations, leaving it vulnerable. 3 human destroyers concentrated fire and the frigate went dark. They're adapting, Kyungmi reported. The Krell are deploying dampening fields. Expected, Daewon replied. Minseo, we need pattern variation. Pattern 5. Minseo's voice came through from her observation ship. Syncopated rhythm, emphasis on offbeats. Throw off their dampening calibration. The rhythm shifted dramatically. Where before the beats had been regular and predictable, now they came in unexpected places. Ships fired at odd intervals, creating a rhythm that seemed chaotic but was carefully structured. The Krell dampening fields, calibrated for regular patterns, became ineffective. 5 years had changed everything. Commodore Daewon stood at the viewport of his flagship, the battlecruiser Resonance, watching ships move through the orbital traffic lanes above Earth. Human vessels mixed freely with alien craft now. Vryn freighters, Krell diplomatic shuttles, even Tauran mining barges. Species that once looked down on humanity now sought trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchanges. The drums had done that. The simple act of refusing to be silent had transformed Earth's position in the galaxy. Commodore, Lieutenant Kyungmi approached from behind. She wore commander's insignia now, earned through 5 years of service in the Percussion Corps. The diplomatic delegation is ready for departure. Ambassador Ji Hai requests your presence in the shuttle bay. Daewon nodded and followed her through the corridors of the Resonance. The ship was enormous compared to the old Thunderhead, a true capital vessel built specifically around the percussion doctrine. Its hull was dotted with advanced percussion arrays, its weapons bays filled with the latest kinetic systems. But it also had something new, a dedicated performance chamber where human musicians could record rhythms that would be broadcast during combat or diplomatic missions. The shuttle bay was busy with preparations. Ji-Hai supervised the loading of equipment, her organizational skills as sharp as ever. She'd become Earth's primary cultural ambassador after the Krell demonstration, traveling the galaxy to explain human music and warfare to species who were finally willing to listen. Day 1. She greeted him with a warm smile. Ready for the Peace Summit? As ready as I'll ever be, Day 1 replied. Still strange to think we're meeting with the Vryn hegemony. 5 years ago they wanted to classify us as primitive. 5 years ago we were supposed to be primitive, Ji-Hai reminded him. Now we're the species everyone wants to understand. Strange how the galaxy works. The delegation included more than just diplomats and military officers. Ji-Hai had insisted on bringing traditional musicians, including a troupe of drummers who specialized in Korean folk music. Master Dong-Soo was among them, the old drummer who'd helped develop the original percussion doctrine. He was frailer now, but his hands remained steady and his eyes sharp. This is different from war drums, Dong-Soo said as he carefully packed his jangu drum. We're bringing peace drums now, but they come from the same heart. The journey to the neutral station took 3 days. The summit location had been chosen carefully, a space station maintained by the Assembly in a system claimed by no one. 17 species would attend, but the focus was on the human-Vryn peace talks. The border raids had stopped after New Jeju, but formal peace had never been declared. Tensions remained. The Vryn delegation arrived in a massive cruiser, its hull scarred from countless battles. Daewon watched it dock with mixed feelings. Part of him still remembered the contempt in Kethric's voice when he'd called human weapons primitive. Part of him remembered the fear in the colony governor's voice when New Jeju was under attack. But another part remembered something Ji-Hai had said during the journey. Peace isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing a different future. The summit chamber was circular, with seating arranged so no species held a position of dominance. The Vryn delegation sat across from the humans. Kethric was there, looking older now, his scales more gray than red. Beside him sat a younger, Vryn female named Shara, identified as a military historian. The initial discussions were stiff and formal. Treaties were proposed, territorial boundaries debated, trade agreements negotiated. It was necessary work, but tedious. The real breakthrough came on the 3rd day, when Ji-Hai suggested a cultural exchange. Before we talk more about treaties, she said, I'd like to propose that we share something deeper. Understanding between our species can't come only from documents. It needs to come from here. She placed a hand over her heart. Kethric looked skeptical, but Shara leaned forward with interest. What do you propose? Music, Ji-Hai said simply. We brought traditional drummers. They'll perform pieces that predate our space travel, that come from Earth's ancient history. We'd like to share that with you, with all of you. And perhaps you could share something of your own cultures in return. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then Thexis, representing the Krell, clicked his approval. The Krell would find this acceptable. We are warriors, but we understand that warriors must also know peace. Music is the sound of peace. The performance was scheduled for that evening in the station's largest hall. Species from all 17 delegations attended, curious about what would happen. The human musicians set up their instruments in the center of the chamber. Jangu drums, buk drums, traditional Korean instruments that had been played for thousands of years. Young Sik was among the performers. He was 17 now, lean and serious with calloused hands from years of practice. He'd survived the New Jeju raid as a child, huddled in a shelter while Vryn cruisers threatened to bombard his home. Music had helped him heal, had given him purpose. Now he stood in front of representatives from the species that had attacked his colony, ready to play. Master Dong-Soo began. His hands moved across the jangu drum with the precision of a lifetime's practice. The rhythm was slow and mournful, a piece traditionally played to honor the dead. Each beat was perfect, carrying weight and emotion that transcended language. The alien delegates listened in profound silence. Many of them had experienced human percussion as a weapon, as something fierce and overwhelming. But this was different. This was percussion as art, as expression, as a window into the human soul. Other drummers joined in, layering rhythms that built on each other. Fast beats followed slow. Soft touches followed hard strikes. The performance told a story without words, a story of struggle and triumph, of loss and hope, of a species refusing to surrender to darkness. Young Sik played his solo piece in the center of the performance. He'd chosen a memorial rhythm, dedicated to those who died when the Vryn raided New Jeju. His playing was raw with emotion, every beat carrying the memory of that terrified child hiding while drums of war thundered above. When the performance ended, the silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Shara, the Vryn historian, stood slowly. Her scales rippled with colors Daewon didn't recognize, some emotion specific to her species. "I must speak," Shara said, her voice tight. "I was not at New Jeju, but I have studied what happened there. I have studied what my people did, the fear we caused, the lives we threatened, and I have studied what happened when Captain Daewon's ship arrived." She turned to face the human delegation. "We thought your percussion was just a weapon. We thought you were simply mimicking our sonic warfare with crude kinetic tools. We were wrong." She gestured toward the instruments. "This is not mimicry. This is expression. You did not learn to make noise to fight us. You have been making noise for your entire history, for joy, for sorrow, for connection. We mocked you for bringing your culture to war. We did not understand that your culture has always included war, that your music and your battles come from the same place." Ketherick rose beside her, moving stiffly. The old warrior looked at the human musicians for a long moment before speaking. "I said your weapons were primitive. I said silence made you weak. I was a fool. Silence was never your weakness. Silence was your patience. You were always ready to speak. You simply waited for the right moment." He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect among the Vryn. "The hegemony formally apologizes for the raid on New Jeju and for all actions against human colonies. We seek peace, if humanity is willing to grant it." Daewon stood. This was the moment Earth Command had hoped for but never quite believed would come. "On behalf of humanity, we accept your apology. We seek peace as well." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But peace must be built on understanding. Your historian is correct. Our percussion is not just a weapon, it's part of who we are. If we are to have peace, you must understand that." "Then teach us," Shara said. "The hegemony would learn about human culture, about your music. We have much to learn." Over the following days, the summit transformed. What had begun as treaty negotiations became something richer. Alien delegates asked questions about human history, about the role of music in warfare, about why rhythm mattered so much to Earth species. Ji-Hai explained how armies had marched to drums for thousands of years, how ships had coordinated with drum beats before radio existed, how music could inspire courage in allies and fear in enemies. She showed them recordings of traditional performances, from Korean folk ensembles to military tattoos, from ancient ceremonies to modern concerts. "Music is mathematics," she said during one presentation, "but it's also emotion. It's order and chaos together. That's why it works as a weapon and as art. That's why it's so fundamentally human." The Krell contributed their own cultural understanding. Their species had sound-based rituals, though very different from human music. The Tauren shared how they perceived vibrations through their rock-like bodies. Even the Vryn, so focused on sonic warfare, revealed that they had traditional sound patterns used in peaceful contexts. A new understanding emerged from these exchanges. Every species had some relationship with sound, with rhythm, with the patterns that moved.